Just stop. I've heard this story repeated over and over again in so many different books and texts and recollections of teachers recalling their teachers. And it's frustrating to the ego who only knows doing. That is the only way it knows how to perpetuate itself. And yet, one could say that the only true spiritual teaching, apart from, everything that's kind of auxiliary around it, such as, in Ken Wilber's words, you want to wake up, grow up, clean up. So not to make it too simplistic. And yet, that is the only shortcut, if there ever was one. Somewhere along the way, we will just need to stop. And that can feel really scary too. There can be like a literal wall of terror that we begin to touch into because if I'm not doing, if I'm not ensuring my survival, if I'm not worrying, if I'm not trying to predict tomorrow, if I'm not thinking about the past and what lessons I need to learn from my past actions, etc., if I'm not worrying about my obligations and what it means to be responsible and what it means to wear all of the 100 different hats that we all wear in our everyday lives, whether it's that of being a good son, a good parent, a good teacher, a good neighbor. We all have those aspirations. And so to just stop feels too simple. It feels like we're being duped. And surely it can't be that easy either. After all, spiritual awakening, enlightenment, and liberation is supposed to be the pinnacle of what we can reach for, right? A bunch of us coming upon the spiritual path, we come from a path of chasing, before we were chasing liberation and enlightenment, we were chasing promotions, jobs, money, relationships. And so it's a very subtle shift from the materialist hedonistic treadmill to the spiritual one. And yet it's not that different. It's just the object of the seeking changed, but the seeking is very much the same. It just likes to see itself as slightly more sophisticated. And so, what can we do? If we have recognized that the seeking itself is, in fact, the very thing that keeps us stuck in samsara, in suffering, then how do we get out of it? Because that seems to inherently imply that we need to do something about it. So it breeds more doing, which is a form of seeking. It's the only form of seeking. What else could seeking be than doing? Whether it is meditating, whether it is trying to calm our minds, whether it is attending retreats, whether it's reading books or watching YouTube videos. What else? What else? And so there is only one what else. And that what else is stopping, just letting go. Not in the doing kind of sense, because again, the ego can try to co-opt this into, again, something to be done, a task. The ego loves its laundry list of things to do, to try to achieve, to get to. It's never at peace here now. It always projects a better tomorrow, somewhere else to get to. So when it hears what I'm saying here, it will think that there is a different tool, a different tactic it can start using that will get it to where it thinks it needs to go. Whereas in reality, the message is far simpler than that. It is about letting go of all effort. And that kind of when it hits, it hits. And that's when, in the relative sense, meditation is useful because it helps us become aware of just how much doing and selfing we are doing all the time. That's why silent retreats are amazing for that kind of thing. If you put yourself in a container where there's nothing to do, there's nobody to talk to, and there's nothing else that you're doing than just sitting with yourself and your thoughts for however long it is. Usually it's, a week or 10 days. It's when you realize just how loud it is up here and how much it constantly pulls on you into identification with the thought. And that's what we mean, that we take ourselves to be the thinker. Even if we've seen through the nature of thought that there is no thinker really, there's still like that subtle identification with the one that needs to act on the thoughts. That certainly was like a step that I became aware of, that I knew I'm not the thinker of my thoughts, but it was kind of conceptual with that occasional glimpse where it was really felt. But in everyday life, there was still a sense of needing to figure things out and act on things until there's a real stopping. And that's the silence. That's the space between that you might have heard other teachers is a funny word, guides point to. And it is precisely in that moment when something else reveals itself, something that doesn't need to be sought. It was always here. It never leaves. It was never born, it can never die. It was never lost, so it cannot be found. And it is in those moments of silence that we recognize that which is seemingly not that. The neti process. Not this, not this, not this. That can be a skillful means of recognizing the silence as well. Whatever thought appears, just notice that's a thought. That's not who I am. That's not what I am. And eventually, as it grinds to a halt, it's kind of like a bike. When we stop pedaling it, it just tips over. It just naturally seizes because it loses its momentum. So our only job, in a sense, is to stop pedaling, is to stop attaching to the thoughts, to the likes, to the dislikes, because that is the only thing that the ego ever does, ever did, and ever will concern itself with. It is to figure out what I want and what I want more of, what I like and what I want more of, and what I don't like and what I want less of, the constant push and pull. And as Buddha said, right, the way out is through equanimity. What is equanimity, you might ask? It's precisely this. It's the thing in the middle that doesn't get toppled over by the push nor the pull. And it becomes a lived moment to moment experience of recognizing the push and pull and not kind of, recursively trying to push or pull at that, not pushing away, resisting the thoughts and the wants and the dislikes, nor is it about clinging on to the space between and the silence when it reveals itself. It is just letting go. It's a constant process of letting go into the present moment here now and surrendering my will, my likes, my dislikes, my future, my past, all of it at the altar of the divine, to use that language. And you see, at this point, right, that this is why we have art, we have poems, we have so many teachings, so many pointers to this, so many wisdom traditions. They're all pointing to the same thing. It's just so tricky to point to with words. That's the whole thing about, the finger pointing at the moon. It's not the moon itself. It is but a sign. It's an arrow. And there's beauty in that too. If we can stop, because if we are anxiously seeking for where the finger is pointing to, because we need to get there, because we're not okay here now, then we will miss the beauty. There's something about stopping for long enough to begin to appreciate the beauty in all of this, slowing down just enough to smell the flowers along the way. And what if it turns out that smelling the flowers was the destination all along?